Welcome everyone to Magma Rages episode 11. Today we're going to be discussing two major topics. Firstly, we've got Noob Cake with us, and we're going to be discussing the 3v3 Trinity series esque tournament that he's hosting, or that he's going to be hosting soon. And we're also going to be discussing after that a bit of recap from DreamHack over the weekend. So we've also got with us the usual Pandemonia. How's it going, guys?
Good yourself.
Hello.
Okay, so um, the main topic is going to be this Trinity series challenge, I believe you were calling it. Uh, Obviously, heavily
The Trinity,
inspired
this Trinity challenge,
Trinity
please.
challenge. Sorry. I keep putting the series in because I'm so used to saying Trinity series. Obviously,
Yeah, no,
inspired by Trinity series. So, do you want to give us just a rundown of how it works? Obviously, it's a team 3v3 tournament, but how's that going to work?
okay. So basically, right. So there's nine classes. Each team, will then ban two of the nine, and then each team will then obviously, make six decks out of the seven remaining classes. So last year was standing. If you keep winning with the same deck, you keep playing with that same deck. So it can happen that one guy can like win all six games, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so basically, it's obviously the way the teams are going to be composed, or will be made, set up, um, will kind of level the playing field for newer players and more older and more skillful players that know the game well.
Yeah.
So basically, let's say you're an older, more experienced player. Dale is new; he doesn't really know what he's doing. So then basically, what we'll do is we'll put Dale in a team with you, and someone else, and then you captain them. Uh, you know, help them make decks, help them throughout the game. We'll be talking to one another during the games. Skype, TeamViewer, Mix it, WhatsApp, whatever the case may be.
Mix
Uh,
it.
Never know.
yeah, so- yeah, and yeah. So basically, and then what I'm going to do is, obviously, the registrations were supposed to be closed yesterday. I forgot about that though. Yeah, so, yeah.
So,
But we're having this episode now, so I'll extend it until tomorrow or the day after, whenever.
yeah.
And then, well, as soon as I have confirmation of everyone that's going to play, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the names out there, and then I think the community, or mostly the players, maybe might add, like the rest of the community will then vote for the captains for the teams. Let's say there's 30 players, there's enough players for 10 teams, we'll need 10 captains. Um, People can, if they want, maybe nominate themselves, to be a captain, give a little motivation as to what would make them a good captain. And yeah, and then we'll take it from there. As soon as we have the captains decided, then I'll obviously um, like just put random, like the rest of the players will just be placed into teams randomly,
Yep.
and the captains will like handle all the admin from there on out. Making sure throughout the game, like screenshots are taken, stuff is submitted, everyone's registered on the website,
Yeah.
everything
So,
else that goes.
just to clarify, this is a South African only tournament, right? So this is only for South African players, or are we extending it beyond
Um,
that? Because obviously this was, as far as I understood, the initiative it was meant to help grow the South African community and help grow the players, or help educate players that are maybe keen on playing tournaments in the future and just not ready to play them yet, and also help players learn from the more experienced players in the community, because we tend to have a bit of a void in the South African community of the experienced players that play a lot of tournaments, which are sort of in the few, and then the many, which is the majority of players that maybe reach rank 5 or rank 10 in a season, but they don't really play a lot of tournaments or push for legend or high legend ranks or anything like that, right? So as far as I understand, that's part of the main goal. So am I right in saying that it's South African only?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I know there are a few South Africans, who stay overseas.
Sure.
I don't think, allowing them to join would be, the worst thing. They are, South African born. Yeah, so, I'll let them enter.
Yeah.
As long as your account is European, as long as you were born here, you are basically South African and you have a European account and not a
Yeah.
North American or whatever the case may be. I don't think there should be any problems with that.
So people that are part of the South African community, basically, because I mean, this podcast
Yeah,
is actually watched by a lot of non-South Africans, weirdly enough. So for them, this is an insight into some of the things we're trying to work on in like our local community to try and uplift players there or players here. I think we've lost Noob Cake a bit. Oh, there we go. Sorry, you disappeared for a bit, but you're back now. So in terms of deck stuff, like deck selection and deck building, how do you imagine that panning out? Is that going to be up to each team to decide? Or is it going to be like a collaborative effort? Because I think one of the interesting things we're likely to see in a tournament like this is some of the newer players might not have access to all the cards. So it's not going to be a case of every week is just 6 tier 1 meta decks versus 6 tier 1 meta decks, right? I think we're going to
yeah,
probably see some interesting stuff because a lot of the teams are going to be a little bit limited by that, by like actual
yeah,
access to
exactly.
cards.
Look, it's going to be kind of hard, to level the playing field like 100% as far as that's concerned. I mean, some people like might have started playing last week and they signed up. Um, they'll obviously have a more limited collection than someone that started playing last month or 2 months ago, even though they're both still considered new players.
Yeah.
Um, I think, I'm going to leave that purely up to the teams. I mean, if the captain feels like he trusts his teammates with his account details, he's going to let them use his account to use his decks and stuff. That's
Oh,
his
okay.
prerogative. But if
So
they
they're not limited to playing on their accounts. No, what I more meant is like, do you imagine the deck building to be collaborative more than like I assumed everyone would play on their own accounts, but
Yeah, yeah, no, look, obviously, but I mean, um, some people might still take this very seriously, um, and trying to be competitive with a basic card only deck, like, let's be honest,
sure.
it's going to be difficult. Like, it's really going to be hard. So, some people might resort to, some captains saying, listen, use this account of mine or whatever the case may be.
Would it be better
Um,
to rather say, make a ruling one way or the other? So say either no doing that, or say everybody, your experienced player has a complete collection. So I know what you said earlier, but and then saying okay, so in fact give newer players a chance to play with the tier 1 top meta decks, and to then because I mean it also shows I think it might be shows a good lesson to say okay, you have all the most powerful cards. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win, right?
Yeah.
So if you
yeah.
maybe then say that basically all the decks are made through the captain, and then the players just play it through that account.
Yeah, well, look, it's one of those things that's going to be difficult to really like control or to
Police, yeah.
keep track of. Uh, there's quite a bit of admin involved with this type of thing, and a little bit more so because we're trying to involve the newer players.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the thing is, I think ultimately I don't think I'm gonna limit the teams to what they can and cannot do in regard to deck building. I mean, if you as a newer player feel like you rather want to learn, with the cards that you have, then so be it. If you want to, learn with top meta decks or whatever the case may be, I mean, that's up to you. I really don't think I'll be able to keep tabs on, who's using what decks and that type of thing. So
I mean, I think that personally, I think that it's totally fine if the teams have to play with certain players having like limited collections. I'm pretty sure it's a more interesting challenge for the more experienced players, deck building wise, and also like lineup wise, right? Like, let's say I have a teammate that can only play Freeze Mage and Taunt Warrior, but maybe I didn't really want to play Freeze Mage and Taunt Warrior in my lineup. I wanted to play Pyro Warrior and Gunther Mage or something in my lineup. Now, you have to sort of build your lineup to suit what your players can play as well. I think that's one of the interesting aspects of team tournaments in general. So, I mean, that would be my suggestion. But obviously, there's still a few details of the rules that need to be ironed out. With a tournament like this, it's obviously very complex in terms of like
yeah,
rule structure and stuff.
yeah. Well, look, obviously I'll make up my mind on that, and I'll have it
Yeah.
sorted out by far enough in advance for people to be able to sort out their decks and whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna like one day before we start say, okay, this is what I've decided. So yeah, no, I'll make sure that there's enough time for everyone to do what they have to do
Yeah. But I mean, the
before we start.
ultimately the team captains in this tournament are meant to be in a sort of helping role, right? They're for like
Yeah,
the newer players that are maybe worried about joining because they don't want to like let down their captain, or they don't want to join because maybe they can't build the decks. Maybe they have like a decent collection, but they don't have like all the tier one decks. Maybe they don't have patches or something like that, and they're like, oh well, I don't want to join because then I'm going to let down a team. I mean, largely this tournament is meant to be the team captains helping the rest of the players in the community. At least that's the way I see it from my understanding.
no, that's 100%. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Like I said, it can be very overwhelming when you just start playing. You don't really want to enter any competitions because you think, I'm going to lose anyway. What's the point? So yeah, so this is just to level the playing field a bit more, and give everyone like an equal chance. New
Yeah.
player that started yesterday, or player that started when the game was in beta. Whatever the case. So
Yeah, and it's basically an opportunity for newer players to get essentially free coaching, rather than having to pay for coaching from one of our local coaches like Pandemonia.
yeah, yeah, I found a loophole in the system. You're all welcome. Like maybe new guys.
Okay, and then
Sorry, Lloyd.
what are your plans regarding streaming the tournament and those kind of things?
I have asked a few of our local streamers slash casters if they'll be willing to stream or cast. I have two of them that said they will, uh, if the time permits. If they don't have any other engagements on that weekend. Yeah, we will have some casting and streaming on Twitch and
Okay,
probably
cool.
YouTube and stuff. So
Yeah, okay. I mean, so yeah, that's good for especially like players that want their moments in the spotlight, from like maybe
yeah,
newer players. They can point to the
yeah,
videos
To be
and say, "Look,
famous.
mom, that's me."
yeah. Well, I also think some people like maybe some of the new players, they don't use deck trackers and game trackers and stuff like that. But being able to go back on a game that you played and look at the mistakes you made and what you did, it's always helpful to learn and get better. So
Yeah.
yeah, having that video to watch was always helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first few games I played in tournament that were streamed. I like went back and watched them pretty much. Like I was probably the first person to watch those VODs. Just to see like, oh, okay, where did I make the mistake? Oh, okay, interesting. You know, like I mean, it's definitely a good way to learn. In this case, it's going to be a bit different because you have like a whole team involved. But yeah, Pandemonia, any
Yeah,
questions you want to ask regarding the tournament?
So, I mean, I know obviously this is mostly for fun, and I think I read a bit, but to tell us about, potential prizes or, entry, is there any entry fee into this? Just for people wondering about that aspect of things.
Okay, well, no, it's a free online thing. The prizes, not all the prizes have been confirmed 100%. I'm still waiting for confirmation on some of them. There will be t-shirts, like customized t-shirts with like a All-Stone South African logo and your gamer tag and whatever the case may be, and some random card packs that will be given to random entrants, like not necessarily winners.
Ooh, card
So
packs.
it's not much, like
Yeah.
card pack
So there
here
are
and
some
there.
nice prizes for people just for participating and getting involved.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a card pack that you didn't have, so take it or
Exactly.
leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as soon as the other prizes have been confirmed, I'll definitely let everyone know. I'll make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
Obviously the t-shirts and stuff will be paid for by moi. The other prizes, will be sponsored. So obviously, sponsors like numbers. So obviously, that's another important thing, though. I mean, in order to grow and get sponsorship from people, sponsors like numbers. So
Yeah.
the more people we can get involved, not only playing but also watching, the better sponsors we'll have for future tournaments.
Yeah.
And so join in, boys and girls.
Any other questions, Panamania?
Uh,
Okay. Well,
I'm quite excited to it though.
yeah, me too. I have one other question, sort of on what you were mentioning there about sponsors and stuff. I suppose this has given you a lot of insight into what it's like to be a tournament organizer and like all the effort that actually goes into putting together a tournament and all the sponsorship and casters and
Yes.
all that stuff. Do you want to tell us a little bit like how painful is that process?
Yeah, look, listen, just like just setting up the entire like the entire like the setup on the website. Like it's not even a website I built. I went to a pre-made website just to set up, this challenge on a website that was made for this. And it's a lot of admin work, it takes a lot of time. You know, like Pandemonia and I, we were actually like we discussed this a lot, like going over like the rules, and but what about this? And then he tells me, no, that's a shit idea, and I'm like, oh damn, I have to start over, start
Yes, you're very
something
helpful.
else. Yeah, look, but some of his points were valid, like one or
Only
two
some of
of
them.
them.
Some of them,
As per usual, only some of them.
Yeah,
yo.
like there's so much admin involved, and you have to think about these small nitty gritty stuff that that might make things difficult. Yeah, it's hectic. I mean, and then getting people to commit, uh, you know, like let's say casters or whatever. They're still normal people who live their own lives. Um, so I don't want to tell people, yeah, listen, um, there will be casters, and then at the end of the day, the casters like make it all. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's difficult. Like a huge shout out to the event organizers, especially the people who organize these things at venues.
Yeah.
I mean, this online, it's pretty simple and straightforward. So yeah, thanks to the guys who actually put in the work, like the actual like the real tournaments that
Yeah.
aside.
Real tournaments.
Legendary.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I
Well,
mean,
you know what I mean.
yeah. I mean, on that note,
It's like
you know,
the big
uh,
boy.
yeah. On that note, a big thanks to you as well for like the effort that you're putting in towards trying to uplift the community and parts of the community in particular that are not necessarily that focused on by all the big real tournaments as you call them. Trying to help all the players and trying to actually grow the number of players interested in tournaments. I mean, we're hoping that some of the people get a taste of this and then they really enjoy the tournament atmosphere, which is very, very different to ladder, right? I mean, Yeah,
Yes, definitely.
yeah, we're gonna have. I mean, by necessity, you have to build 9 decks for this tournament, and then you go through the whole banning process that you were talking about earlier. So, by necessity, it's gonna be very interesting, this tournament. I mean, we saw Trinity series was very different to what was already a relatively stale meta then, and now, I mean, the
Yeah.
meta is still very much in flux. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what teams bring.
No, 100%. Like, I mean, even in that style meta, it was still fun to watch,
Yeah,
because, like, the,
Murloc
like,
Paladin
how can
6
I,
ode.
like, yeah, not only was, like, one broken deck banned, but at least two, like,
yeah.
two decks were banned. Two broken decks. Let's say everyone banned Warrior, everyone banned,
Shaman.
Well, actually, Rogue got
uh,
higher bans, but anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
yeah, it's not open that can of worms now, but anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, it's fun. It's completely different, even just to, like, your normal thing. The fact that two, like, of the strongest classes will get banned
yeah,
makes it different. So this forces you to use, like, the weaker classes. Like, now, for instance, like, Warlock is nowhere really. Nobody's playing Warlock, and this is going to force people to use Warlock. You might not
well,
have a choice.
I mean, I think most teams will probably self-ban Warlock, but some teams might have to play Warlock. You're right, just because that might also be limited on player collection, right? Zoo is a very easy, cheap deck to build, so it might well be one of the better decks that some of the teams can build.
Yeah, 100%. It might be like one of the stronger decks throughout the tournament for all that we know. So,
Yeah. I mean, Murloc
because of
Paladin, for
all,
instance, in Trinity series was, did performed pretty well, even though Paladin was nowhere in the normal meta.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah, so it's exciting. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
let's do it.
so you're from EAE Gaming, which is why we have the big EAE Gaming banner up here. So
Yeah,
obviously, you're hosting the tournament under that name, under the EAE Gaming banner, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, it's been a while since we've heard much from EAE Gaming, to be honest, in Hearthstone. Like, I remember when I first started playing tournaments in the local scene, the organization was more involved, but they've been a bit quiet recently. So it's good to see them coming
yeah,
back, even if it's mostly just you forcing them back.
yeah. No, I've been trying, like, telling them to get their heads out of their asses. So, yeah, no. Look, we had a few gaming teams, a few years back. I played a lot of Dota as well.
Shame.
We had a first team in the DGL. Yeah, and then life happened. Like, most of the teams broke up, like the Counter Strike teams and Dota teams and whatever. And yeah, now I'm more involved in Hearthstone, trying to get it, like, going there again. So yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll see a bit more from EAE in the future.
Hopefully. And then on to our second topic of discussion for the evening. Also on the topic of tournaments and last hero standing, there was a very big tournament that was held over this weekend, which I know Pandemonia caught, and Noob Cake didn't even know was going on. So we're going to have to give him a bit of an explanation along with our viewers of what happened. So this was DreamHack Austin, so in America, obviously. And it was a tournament held. So the way the tournament works is they have a really big Swiss portion with it's completely open, so anyone that pitches up at the event can play. So there was over 240 players, I think, that were playing in the Swiss portion, and then that filters down to a top 16, which is a single elimination bracket from then on. So we saw a lot of like really top players, a lot of players traveling from all over the world, from Australia to Europe, and all of that traveling to America to play. It's a very big tournament, and I mean, I think it was quite a big success. Do you want to give us a rundown of the highlights from the tournament, Pandemonia?
So I only managed to catch like the sort of the semi the a lot of the top 16. I watched some of the Swiss brackets, and it's still good it makes me feel better about playing Hearthstone. The fact that you still see some really good players doing well. Maybe not every tournament, but still, not just winning once and then never seeing them again. So you're seeing a sort of this resurfacing of players. Guys like who haven't done well in a long time. I mean, you haven't seen Reynad or Trump
and Dog.
Even guys like and Dog. Everyone. I mean, if you into the series, if you follow the competitive community, you know that they're strong players, but they haven't won what you could say a major tournament or performed well in a major tournament for quite a long time.
Yeah, because they've been more focused on the streaming. I think there's quite a few of those players that we've seen that have gone more towards streaming in recent times that put forward a good showing. I mean, Dog went 9-0 in the Swiss portion, undefeated in Swiss, and then he only lost in top 8. So he went 10-1 for the weekend, which is a pretty good pretty good score overall. So I mean, I think he was pretty happy with that. And I mean, we've seen he's a very good player, getting really high legend ranks and stuff, but he really doesn't go to a lot of tournaments anymore. So especially the American community of streamers, we saw pitch up a lot more at this tournament, like Trump and Dog and Reynad. And I mean, Trump and Reynad and their team, Tempo Storm in particular, did very well with 4 players in the top 16 of the So I mean, 4 of the, I think they had 5 or 6 players there. So 4 of them making the top 16 being Just Saying, Eloise, Reynad and Trump. And then one of the other players that we mentioned, or one of the other things we mentioned earlier, is that there was some players traveling from quite far to make the tournament. One of them being Mr. Lego, who came all the way from Australia. So he was also known as the Tempo Storm Slayer this weekend, because in the top 16 he beat Eloise, and then he beat Just Saying. Okay, and then Reynad in the semi-final. So he was playing against Tempo Storm players all the way through to the final. And then the final was won by another player that's been well known in the American community for a while, but hasn't really had like a big tournament performance, and that's Shoop. He has a very statistical based approach to the game, from what I heard, and from apparently the approach of his lineup building to the tournament, which is from my perspective as somebody that also has a very statistical based approach to the game, quite a reassuring thing to see, right? Not just seeing that there's good players, but also seeing that having that statistical based approach can be rewarded. So yeah, and what other highlights do you think there were from the tournament, Panamonia?
Well, in terms of highlights, it was good to see. I mean, you still saw in Solid 16. Unfortunately, there was no Warlock decks, but it was good to still see there were some priest decks floating around. Dog brought a priest list.
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure how well we did. The problem, and also something people got to be careful when looking at all these deck lists, is the fact that it was last year standing means that even though someone's lineup made it to someone made it to, let's say, top 8 or top 4 with a certain lineup, you don't actually know how often they played all their decks.
Yeah, so you might see like Control Shaman or Cat Destroyer had a Secret Mage in his lineup. You might see something like that and think, ooh, Secret Mage must be really good, and it made top 16 this tournament, but you don't know how actually often he really played that.
Because he could have just 3-0'd people with Burn Mage or with Pirate Warrior, or
he couldn't have done it with Burn Mage or Control Mage or whatever you want to call it, or Gunther Mage, because obviously he already had Mage in his lineup. But I get what you mean.
Yes, of course he is. my point, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we did see that Gunther Mage was definitely one of the rising stars of this weekend. Sort of a more control-y focused mage with like Medivh and more value, taking, I think, less of the sort of the all-in freeze and doomsayer kind of effects away from freeze mage, and playing more of the like mana worms for the early game and cabal couriers for the discover, and sometimes even like meteors, violence portals, and Medivh, obviously to get that synergy to actually play a lot more on board than freeze mage traditionally does.
Yeah, So, like the way I see the deck, it's kind of a combination between Tempo Mage and Freeze Mage, and it tries to kind of combine the elements of both, so that you can obviously the idea is to try and have good matchups against across the board, because like obviously Tempo Mage was weak to certain decks, Freeze Mage is weak to certain decks. So by trying to make a sort of a hybrid, the aim is to try and minimize those weaknesses.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that the deck, there was some like varying deck list versions, right? But I mean, one of the things that it does quite well is in certain matchups it can play the Freeze Mage game if your opponent doesn't have healing, like against Rogue or something, and you can just Alex them into Fireballs and Frostbolts and Pyroblasts and any other burn you get off your Primordial Glyphs or something like that, right? Whereas in the other matchups it can play more of a control-based game and try and actually win through like Medivh and getting Medivh value, those 10 drops from their Pyroblasts and stuff like that.
And then still, yet there's those times where you just get the turn 1 Mana Worm into turn 2 Arcanologist, and you just out tempo your opponent. It was the one game I think it was against, I can't remember who it was. It was the Mage against a Hunter. Basically, just got so early on board, the Hunter missed the 1-drop, and it was like Tempo Mage running over a Hunter, basically, is what the game resembled.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that was nice to see was some of the practice groups doing well, right? So like that idea of practice groups was kind of paying off. Obviously, Tempo Storm seemed to prepare together. They had a lot of similarities between their lineups, but they weren't playing exactly the same lineups or exactly the same decks all the time. But we saw the practice group that was Amnesiac, Chucky, Nostam, and Yoitzflow do quite well, with Chucky and Amnesiac making top 16. Unfortunately, they both lost out in the top 16. But I mean, they had completely identical deck lists and decks, right? So it was 120 cards identical across those players. And I mean, 2 of them made top 16, so that's reassuring to see that approach, can actually work as well. The idea of working with other players.
Exactly. Even though Hearthstone's a single player game, it's still the idea of a team, and the idea of collaborating with thoughts and ideas. It does seem to have a helpful result.
Yeah. I think overall as well, this tournament looked a lot like very controlly. I don't know if people remember back to DreamHack Austin last year, but N'Zoth Paladin was one of the big decks at that tournament, and strangely enough made a bit of a comeback in this tournament as well, with a few players, including Shoop, playing the N'Zoth Control Paladin as their Paladin deck of choice.
That made me feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Because of all that value.
All that value. Ken and Elise and N'Zoth, and I was like, it's great.
Yeah.
This is what value looks like.
So yeah, I mean, we saw that deck making a comeback, and there was also a fair bit of like Jade Druid to deal with the control decks. And one of the big decks that was surprising to me to see was the Control Shaman. We saw Eloise, for example, playing a Control Shaman list, playing a Spirit Echo for that really, really like big value, right? Where you Spirit Echo your minions, and then when they die, they get returned to your hand. Which is when you have Spirit Echo on like things like White Eyes, for example, or
Elemental.
Or one of the big things in that deck actually is also just hero powering a lot and then having free thing from belows. Because when you Spirit Echo them, they come back to your hand still as 0 mana 5/5s, which is I've heard pretty good. It's also
yeah, I'm sure Panda and I had this discussion about that card just when it was revealed. I told you this.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still not completely sold. But apparently, if at least did well with it, we'll see if it becomes an actual thing. Sometimes, in these events, especially the fact that it's big open, sometimes the element of surprise works. The fact that no one's because Shaman is so underplayed right now, people only really are expecting a mid-range elemental Shaman or a Jade version. So, a control Shaman, you end up mulliganing wrong. You end up, playing around the wrong things, and then all of a sudden someone drops Earth Elemental, and you're like, oh well, this is awkward.
Yeah. Well,
the deck might be good, but I think a large amount of it might be the surprise value.
Yeah, well, Eloise's version was actually the the Jade version of the control, where you also get the value from Spirit echoing on your Battlecry Jade stuff, like Jade Spirits or Jade Chieftains or Aya. I mean, Aya Spirit Echo of it is a lot of value, right? That's like four Jades that you're getting from that because of the
Yeah.
death
Oh, if
metal
you're not
stuff.
dead, that's great. Yeah, that's always
Yes,
the whole thing. Is as long as
if
you're
you're
not
not
dead, it's
dead.
great.
Mm.
And that's always the trick, right?
Yeah, I've heard not dying is a good tactic.
You understand? Yeah.
But I mean, in general, I think the meta for this tournament was really, really slow. At least if we
Yeah.
judge the decks that made it through, right? It's difficult to say without full statistics of all the decks, but if we look at the top 16, that meta was pretty slow, and that's where cards like Spirit Echo and N'Zoth can actually really gain you enough value. I mean, the only real deck that was around to punish the slow decks was your Quest Rogue. There was a bit of Pyro
Pirate
Warrior,
Warrior.
but I think the Pirate Warrior, a lot of the people had enough tech that they should be able to beat the Pirate Warriors a fair amount of the time. Like,
It
for
was
example,
best
Elise
of
had like Harrison Jones in every deck except the Quest Rogue.
And the thing about it also is that I think also because the Pirate Warrior is obviously still decent, but the fact that Taunt Warrior, I think a lot of players just played Taunt Warrior because of how good
Yeah.
Taunt Warrior is. So it's not necessarily that Pirate Warrior is bad, but Taunt Warrior just fits better into many people's lineups.
Yeah, I mean, Elise was actually playing two crawlers in a Quest Rogue, so even that was teched against Pirate Warrior.
Yeah, because that's a really unfavorable
It's
matchup.
fun. They're so easily counted now. Like people don't want to play it because they feel like they're gonna get embarrassed.
Yeah, I mean, it never feels good getting your Naga Corsair eaten, or your,
There's
the
no
South
worse
Sea.
feeling than losing a game with like a deck like Pirate Warrior. Like it's terrible. I hate it. I love playing that, but like losing a game that I'm not supposed to lose, feels bad.
That's Hearthstone.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are just a lot more tools to deal with that deck, and also, as Pandemonio was mentioning, the prevalence of Taunt Warrior. A lot of people just wanted to bring that, and now that there's kind of a second Warrior deck, you're just generally in tournaments going to see less of the one because people have to choose because you can never bring two Warrior decks to a tournament. At least not any major tournament formats we've seen.
Yeah, until the day where you can bring like only Warrior decks, right?
Yeah.
Only, like
Yeah, or a
It's always
tournament
potential,
format where
you know?
you could have multiple decks of one class.
It could be an interesting format actually.
It would be because it makes mulligans very difficult unless you tell your opponent which deck you're playing.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, warrior, but wait, do I mulligan for the aggro or the quest warrior or the like control warrior that he was playing without the quest? Now I'm confused.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think GMAC also I think this is kind of serves sort of because this was the first major tournament since the release of Ngoro.
Yeah.
This will serve sort of as a kind of a benchmark and sort of a large portion of the competitive community will look at this in terms of reflecting and going, okay, where to from now? Where's the tournament meta going? Where do lineups go from here? This is sort of the place because before there were a lot of open cups and things, but not no real major tournaments. In terms of saying, okay, what lineups are good, what lineups are bad, what decks are good in a tournament. Some decks might be poor on ladder, but are good in a tournament environment because the ability to obviously ban is quite a crucial part of tournaments.
Yeah.
Whereas in obviously you play ladder, if you're just queuing into Pirate Warriors all day long, you're just going to play a deck that counts as that.
Yeah, but I mean, before everyone rejoices for the slow meta, we have to bear in mind that was relatively the same last year at DreamHack Austin before like aggro shaman and stuff started picking up, right? I mean, that was in the same release. It just like at that event, I remember one of the scariest decks for most of those decks was the Malygos Freeze Mage. Meta's slow when Freeze Mages are playing Malygos.
Yeah, and also, I still remember last year where Terrence M won with Rena Lock. I think he was playing.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
No, it was Reno Lock. I mean, at that event too, I think Frozen was playing Reno Freeze Mage. Or no, he was playing Reno Malygos Freeze Mage. Like that's how slow that meta was.
Oh.
So,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the meta could definitely speed up a bit, but I think this is a good indicator that it's a pretty healthy meta. I mean, we've seen a lot of different builds, a lot of different archetypes being viable.
There's
So
only one dumpster class, right? Like one complete dumpster class.
yeah,
At least it's better than two, right?
yeah. I mean, I don't think
You know.
anyone's missing. It's not even that Zoo is that dumpster as a deck. It's just dumpster compared to other things, right? It's not like they have
Yeah.
no powerful cards. It's simply that Zoo doesn't match up well against all the other stuff at the moment. So maybe
Yeah,
once
in the
that
case of
changes, we could see Zoo rise. It's less of a yeah of a case of their cards just being bad or something, you know?
it's also because currently I think there are a lot of other decks that do zoo things better.
Yeah, like aggro druid.
Other class, yeah, and other classes have other cards and tools that currently do the whole zoo approach. I mean, even aggro druid, pirate warrior, even these days, does a better job of zooing than zoo does.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's all we have for this episode. I'd advise everyone to go and sign up for the EAE Gaming Trinity Challenge. Did I get the name right this time? Hype. To go and sign up for that, all the South African viewers. And if you're not South African, stay tuned. I'm sure we'll release some details on my
Yeah,
Twitter or something. I'm
I'm
sure I'll
spectate.
tweet or something about the streams when it's up to help promote the streams. So you can always come and watch if you're missing those team tournaments that we haven't really been having at all since Trinity series at least. Um, and also, I'd advise everyone to go back and watch DreamHack Austin games. I think they were pretty fun. At least the games
Lots of
themselves were fun.
shenanigans.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of like top decks, and and for me, the important thing is constantly watching, you know, how the guys avoid, you can see some guys obviously get sometimes get visibly upset, but then how they still manage to maintain calm when something really bad goes their way, and like we were chatting earlier. Like there were some games where I felt even worse than I think the guy actually playing it.
Trump.
I think I nearly got more tilted watching Trump, as a mid-range hunter draw double high main and nesting rock in his opening hand, than he was. You could see he was not happy, but how those pro players managed to maintain their composure.
Yeah.
And I mean, like the commentators were saying, for me, what kind of stuck with me is like, it's easy. Well, it's easier for good players to do well when they draw well, right? Even average players can win any game if you draw everything perfectly on curve. But it's the really good players where where the skill shows through is when how they deal with when they don't draw well, when they don't draw exactly what they need, how they manage to
Yeah.
a lot of times win and come. And that's always the encouraging thing to watch.
Figuring out the slightly more alternate lines to win a game rather than the standard line you would take in every normal game, right? When you draw perfectly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh well, even seeing that when you draw horribly, you're just gonna lose the game. It happens.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it happens.
Sure.
But like sometimes you just gotta, take it and move on.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, any other shout outs or call outs or anything you guys want to give before we sign off?
Just always been fun.
Yeah, no, I'm good. It was nice chatting to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. Thanks everyone.
Cheers.
Please like, subscribe, follow, all those things to help grow the channel, and follow us on Twitter, except Noob Cake because he doesn't care about Twitter. But yeah, thanks everyone. Cheers.